So last week, I showed you how you can use interactivity on your Slack messages to trigger a Pipedream workflow from a button click in a Slack message. And I've also showed you in the past how to use a / command on Slack to register a quick command to trigger a Pipedream workflow. Let's combine the two concepts and make a / command that generates a message that contains buttons or interactive elements, so that way we can actually create a workflow from start to finish for N Slack users to do something. In this case, if you're a Pipedream Teams customer, you can request to have the maximum queries per second on an endpoint lifted above the normal limit. A little bit of a meta episode, I know. It should be pretty cool. So the first thing I'm going to do is head over to the API for Slack, and I'm going to create a brand new app. We're going to create one from scratch, and we'll just call it the Teams bot. And we need to deploy it. This will be our internal workspace. Perfect. So we want to make a new / command on it, and we'll call it request QPS increase. And the request URL will go to a Pipedream workflow, right? So I'm going to head over to Pipedream, and I'm going to create a new webhook that will receive these / commands. Now that I've copied the URL, I'm going to paste it in here and say request a QPS increase on a specific workflow. Now, we could ask them to enter in arguments like this, but that's kind of annoying as a user. I don't want to have to remember argument positioning and ordering and all that stuff. We're going to make this much more user-friendly than that. Instead, we're going to use blocks with the block kit builder. Now, we can go over to the block kit builder, and we can show a form to the customer to specify which workflow they would like to have QPS increased and how much to increase it to. So let's go over to the title. There's a title, header. So we'll create a header and we'll call it request QPS increase. And we need to ask them for input, right? We need to ask them, hey, which workflow would you like to have increased? So I'm going to change the name to workflow to increase. And then the other one will be a label that says, for example, the amount, increase QPS to. And you can see the action IDs are a little generic. So I'm going to update these to just say workflow ID and QPS. Requested QPS. Requested QPS amount makes way more sense as a title too. Requested QPS amount. Cool. Now it might be helpful to add a little paragraph in here just so that it makes a little bit more sense of what's going on. The cat is a nice image, but we don't need the cat. So we'll just say fill out this form. The workflow ID is found in the URL of your workflow when it's opened in the dashboard. Formatted P underscored few dots. It's formatted like that. Oops. Formatted like that. Awesome. Now we have a nice little introductory text, a field, and we need a button to actually submit the form itself. So we'll add a quick button. Change we'll make is adding a style key and adding primary. So that way it's got a nice little green highlight. Great. So now we have a nice little basic block kit, and we can head over to my test area here, my test channel, and we'll request a QPS increase. Cool. So Pipedream was notified of my request, and here we can see a new event came in. This is the post request coming from Slack. And I'm going to configure my trigger to instead return 204 no content. And then instead of returning a response immediately, we can use this response URL from Slack that's unique to this particular message. So I'm going to add a new step and send an HTTP request to this URL in order to actually send a block kit message, for example. So under the body, I'm going to show you application JSON. You can enter in our block kit message here under the custom expression. So I'm just going to copy and paste this lovely big old block of JSON, paste it in here, and click test. And if all goes well, we will see a form inside of Slack, which we do. Perfect. Okay, so we have a really basic form, and let's pretend that we're going to ask for an increase on this workflow. We want to increase it to, I don't know, 30 queries per second, 40 queries per second. Now, we need to be able to listen to interactivity events. As soon as I click the submit request, Slack is going to send an interactivity event. Our bot is not currently set up to listen to interactivity events. We need to go to the interactivity and shortcuts menu and enable it. Once again, it's asking for a request URL, which we can make very quickly thanks to Pipedream. So open up a new Pipedream workflow that's triggered by a URL and click Save and Continue to generate it. Then we'll copy that and place it back within our application. So now every single interactivity event is associated with our bot will hit this URL. Now we can go back here, submit a request. This should trigger an interactivity event. We'll go back to the workflow and look right here. We got a new post request, and it includes the payload of the block kit message we just interacted with. Let's JSON stringify that whole thing to make it a little bit easier to understand what's going on. Parse payload is what we'll name this step. And then under the results, I can just copy the path to this and then use JSON.parse to parse this particular payload. Now we've got a much easier thing to read than a giant string, huge string. Now the state of the form is under the state object, and under those values you'll see a funny kind of format for these particular keys. It's kind of weird looking with a unique key string. It's probably different from event to event. That's a problem. But we have the workflow ID and we have the requested QPS amount, so that's something. Let's do a little bit of massaging here. This is the less fun part about writing code, am I wrong? So we'll have to format the payload, and the exact key we need is that states values path. And then we'll go over to this code, and what I reach for here is like a reduce function. So we know this is an object, right? And we want to iterate over the values of the object. So we can call object.entries, which will return an array of key value pairs. And we can use the reduce function in order to iterate over those. So the reduce function takes the sum or the carry, we'll call it carry in this case. And the next argument are the individual keys entries to the object, which will be key and a value. And the whole purpose of this thing is to return an object. So the next argument to the reduce function is just the object itself. We're returning a object. This is the initial value to start with. The initial carry will be an empty object. All we're doing is returning the value and not the upper level key. Don't forget to actually spread the carry and the value. This is just a fancy way of making it easier to modify this object. And don't forget, why did I do that? There we go. Extra formatting issues. I got probably an extra parenthesis over here. That's the reason. Okay, so we'll click test and hopefully we'll see a reduced object that doesn't have that weird unique ID in front of each entry. Cool. So now we have a modified kind of formatted values that's much easier to work with. The key is the actual attribute name that we care about, like the individual element on the form. Next, we want to send a message back to the Slack channel where this came from and say, great, we received your request and we will fulfill it. So we can send a message to a public channel. All right, so I selected my Slack account, and the channel I'm going to use is actually just the channel that is included in the message. So it'll always reply back to the channel that we care about. I wonder if it's supposed to use the channel ID versus the channel string. Let's try the string. I'm thinking the string name is the way to go. And then we'll just say QPS request received and we'll type in the workflow name, right? So under our formatted payload, we can take in the workflow ID to increase to, and then the workflow QPS we'd like to increase it to. to the value. We should probably, set the bot username to TeamSpot and give it a whirl. See how it goes. Cool. So now we can tag ourselves using this message if we'd like, or just let the regular channel notifications just let us know to increase this 40 QPS. Heck, even send an email or create a quick Airtable table to show this to-do list of workflows to increase. In a future episode, I'm going to show you how you can approve or reject these requests using emoji or reactions to a message. But I hope this was helpful. Have a great day.